Going to have to put the old rose-tinted glasses aside for this one. This game aged more poorly than when I said I wanted somebody to keep me at home so I could play the new Animal Crossing game in March of 2020. Before I begin, I ask one thing. You come to this video with an open mind. The Bioshock Infinite I remember and the game I played before making this video were so starkly different that I need to rewrite large chunks of my talking points for this video. So I hope this helps other people remember what the game was like as well. Or at least, don't post your comment about how I'm wrong until after the video is over. Alright, let's get into it. Bioshock Infinite is a sequel to popular action shooters Bioshock 1 and 2, two games widely acclaimed for powerful stories and biting social commentary, now with a completely new setting and story but with similar through lines to the original title. I feel like spending a video ripping on a popular game is gonna earn some hard and fast criticism, so let's begin by front-loading what I liked about the game so no one gets the impression that I have nothing but negatives about it. The good. First off, this game is visually gorgeous, especially compared to its predecessors. The modeled characters are full of personality and are visually distinct, and the backdrops are full of life and are amazing at communicating how each area distinguishes itself from the next. The art was a step above the rest, especially for the time it was out, and it still blows me away. Second, this game had two plots, and one of them was really good. While I think the story of Elizabeth, world travel, and the Tears had some major holes and was just hard to follow sometimes, overall I think it was a very compelling narrative with some amazing lines and character development. The Lutis twins were absolutely incredible, and watching Elizabeth's transition from a terrified girl to what she became was an absolute delight.
Hello? Hey! Knock it off! I'm not going to let you kill him.
Really? Fucker. What are you going to do to stop me?
The bad. Now, on to smaller nitpicks and things I disliked about the game that I was initially going to make the video about. First off, the low-hanging fruit. The connections to Bioshock were largely unnecessary. The magic powers didn't have a major story connection like they did in Bioshock. Maybe if they were connected to Elizabeth's powers, they would have felt much more tolerable, but the vigors just felt weird and out of place here. The "there's always a man, there's always a lighthouse" was kinda weird, felt like a sequel tease, and did nothing to enhance the overall story. My only exception in terms of connections to Bioshock was the death of Songbird. I think it would have been perfect if they left it at that, a fun reference and a callback without making anything important rely on it. Since the point is, Songbird could die at any underwater location. Otherwise, trying to connect the games was just aggravating. I'm not a big fan of expanded lore being added on after a story's already well established, especially because I feel like that's the only reason the game has Bioshock in the title. We are not getting into Burial at Sea in this video, and I will blissfully continue to ignore its existence until it's time for my next Bioshock-themed script. The game is also weirdly samey. First off, not every game needs a crazy man makes you fight bunches of enemies like you're in a show, teehee, ain't he unhinged? At least Cohen had a quad tick. But both King Alexander and Fink were just repeats of Fort Frolic, taking the concept of the level without the soul. Cohen's story is one of revenge, of sending you at two unique enemies and highlighting what happened to his victims, causing rising horror when you realize how mad the man has gone in search of art, showing living beings cased in statues or people frozen time and time again. You're made to take pictures of 4 of these individuals, and even when doing Cohen's work, he turns on you on a whim, showing you you're not even safe when operating within his rules, Adam having degraded his brain so completely that he can't really distinguish friend from foe anymore. Fink just wants to job interview, and I guess the fact that he's a greedy capitalist overlord isn't enough. He's gonna send some random people to die against you for funsies. It's also not random, it's samey. Remember the fireman you fought early on? That's enemy number 1, and the crow afterwards? That's enemy 2. The tech? Yeah, the third guy's a scary Washington statue that you've already faced. That's 3. The enemies, as well as grunts, will repeat and be reskinned over and over after this ad nauseum with very little variation going forward. For a basic game, yeah, sure, it makes sense, saves some time, but for a massive AAA title, really? But those are our smaller nitpicks. This is time to dig into the meat of this. The entire section of the video I didn't know I was making until I replayed the game, the actual reason I was both shocked and horrified about how bad it was compared to its predecessors. See, the Bioshock series, for as many gripes as I've displayed, really shines in terms of its story and social commentary. When I bring up its subtlety, it's not that it was actually subtle, not with Ayn Rand Drew Ryan at the helm of the loud critique of libertarianism. It at least told the story without screaming its values at you. It wasn't the Adam alone that was the killer, it was Ryan's refusal to let anyone do anything but run with it, no matter how many horrific crimes they committed. It wasn't the revolution that was bad, it was the fact that the man behind it wasn't nearly the champion of the people he claimed, truly just another power-hungry, greedy megalomaniac looking to make a quick buck. These aren't exactly hidden, but they do require a little bit of thought and discussion. To preempt, I don't think games in which you mow down leagues of obviously bad people are a problem. It can be a stress reliever, honestly. But this game put Bioshock in the name, so I'm judging it based on if it is or is not a compelling narrative, and dear lord, with the exception of the Elizabeth plotline, it is awful. Okay, you know the basics. You enter the town, you get the interesting stuff out of the way, and after stumbling through old-timey America worship, you are awarded with a ball to throw at a mixed-race couple, greeted with additional horrifically racist imagery. Now, as a moment on its own, it's a great way to introduce the conflict. I know my stomach plummeted when it came out of nowhere, and I still felt that twinge at how awful it was seeing it again. It was a great reminder that these old-timey values aren't all pastel clothes and transatlantic accents. The fact that Booker has a choice to throw the ball is a bit ick. I can also see it as a way to avoid people going, well, if Booker was terrible, would the story have ever happened? By showing he'd be caught either way. But I also think that means the choice there is ridiculous. I get that a big theme of the game is that choices don't really matter and all's predetermined, but that's still gross. The game then proceeds as if it's terrified that you'll forget for a single moment that this place is up to its neck in racism. You go to the Fraternal Order of the Raven, a place with some men in pointy hoods and statues and paintings of a heroic John Wilkes Booth and a demonic Lincoln. After, of course, you get to see a statue of Comstock fighting a snake bearing caricatures of Black, Indigenous, and Asian faces, and are later brought past examples of segregation, showing the exploitation of the non-white people in the city. And you're brought through a museum full of racist caricatures of the state of wars Booker fought in. It's really hard to dwell on his guilt at being a killer when you're being paraded around imagery that stopped being shocking ages ago, and now it's just the game feeling like it wants to show people racist things under the guise of, no, it's made by the bad guys though. And then finally to Fink, who is aiding and facilitating in this exploitation in his massive company town. Currently, you're on a non-optional mission from Daisy Fitzroy, the leader of the Vox Populi, a revolutionary group against Columbia and Comstock itself, to get weapons from a supplier named Chen Lin for the revolution effort. Also, Booker uses a slur. Yes, I know it's one Fontaine used in the past. Yes, I know it might be historically accurate. Levine wasn't the right person to write either of these into their respective scripts, but holy crap, bro, for your protagonist? Weird play, but okay. You're led into Shantytown, and your first look in there is finally a more realistic looking depiction of the horrific effects of racism, which also parallels what we see today. Once again, it seems like the game is getting serious. Until you arrive and the game sends somebody named Homeless Man to attack you randomly, because we can't forget this is a game about shooting people. Also, there's this part where you have to distract some people by...
Hit it! There's a tail over there.
Hit it harder! Barely making a goddamn
There, that one.
On it.
Yeah. You head to the police station, get a face full of a reminder that this game has racism, and then you see the revolution actually starting to do some damage, with Fitzroy actually gaining some semblance of control. Also, if you're wondering what the game is trying to tell you by giving her some power, don't worry, it will just say it.
When it comes down to it, the only difference between Comstock and Fitzroy is how you spell their name.
Don't worry if you missed that, they do it again in case it wasn't clear.
Look at this. Fitzroy's no better than Comstock. Was she?
This, for me, is when the game goes from an action shooter lacking a lot of the compelling narrative it could have had to being out and out gross. Let's look at Bioshock. You have Andrew Ryan and Fontaine. Andrew Ryan, who doesn't actually care about the poor and leaves them out to rot. Fontaine, who also doesn't care about the poor, he just exploits them for his gain while pretending to be one of them, with no intent to actually better their lives. The game shows you that the two of them really aren't that different, and I agree. Let's look at Infinite. You have Comstock and Fitzroy. Comstock, a racist cult leader who intends to drop bombs on whatever he can in the world, exploit those who don't fit into his white utopia, and offs his own wife, framing Fitzroy just because he wants to cover up anything that might stand in his way or make dinner parties with the family slightly awkward. Fitzroy is really tired of her and her people being scapegoated, starved, tortured, and murdered, and is willing to fight an armed city to change that. Her willingness for collateral apparently making her just as bad as the first guy. Yikes. I'm reminded of that Tumblr post that decries the trope of when a villain makes too much sense, adding a bunch of bafflingly evil stuff on as well to make sure we don't side with them. That was her scene with the child. It just felt like a joke. I know they retconned her reasoning at Burial at Sea, which is good, better than not. They just made it all about Elizabeth, which I guess I have feelings on, but those are for later. For now, I'm glad they eventually realized it was stupid, glad they fixed it in a later DLC, but the whole plot point that Daisy was bad too was ridiculous and downright kind of nasty in what it was saying. Oof. To wrap it all up, I think this entire game could have been massively improved by cutting out just about everything regarding the racism plot. Taking out a good 90% of it would have absolutely gotten the point across, and Levine could have spent that time focusing on tightening up the story about time jumps in multiple universe and how it affects Elizabeth. Take out the Bioshock stuff too, and yeah, you've got a story about choices, the lack thereof, and those consequences. I expect more out of this studio, and I'm sorry if this one seemed unnecessarily harsh, but I feel like it all needed to be said, especially in the era of infinite theme nostalgia. What do you think? Is there anything I missed or you think I interpreted poorly? Let me know in the comments. Please give me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this and you want to see more. It helps out so much. Have a beautiful day, and I will see you in a hell of my own making.
They're not exactly what they appear.
I was going to have told you they'd come.
No,
The subjunctive?
that's not the subjunctive.
I don't think the syntax has been invented yet.
It would have had to have been.
Had to have had been. That